Tone.
Calvin, come help me. Come help me. Come help me. This game all I'm doing.
Don't start. Don't start.
Doing that. No, that was a good day.
Does not face an existential threat, but the verdict could cast a shadow over its reputation.
Today's ruling is very damaging to the Trump brand. And now his company, that has been his sort of alter ego in the business world, stands convicted of a 15-year scheme to defraud.
Of course, a spokesman for the Trump organization called the verdict preposterous and defended its business practices. It is just the latest turn in numerous Trump investigations, and soon the January 6th committee will issue a sweeping report. On Tuesday, the committee chairman told reporters the panel expects to make criminal referrals. Other members reiterated more would be coming soon.
Donald Trump and others committed criminal offenses in their effort to prevent the peaceful transfer of power. We're discussing, and I think we're closing in on a final decision about whether to make referrals and exactly what those referrals will be.
This is just the latest turn in Trump's 2024 presidential campaign, which he announced last month and has already been marked by controversy. And while most potential rivals remain wary of taking him on directly, some are now urging the party to move on, generally speaking, from the past. Tony?
That is true, Bob. Thank you very much. And in our next half hour, we're going to ask attorney Ricky Kleeman about what this criminal tax fraud conviction could mean for those other investigations of the former president and his businesses.
The Supreme Court hears arguments this morning in a high-stakes case on voting laws. Now, many analysts say the outcome could potentially, quote, damage American democracy. Chief legal correspondent, that's Jan Crawford, is outside the Supreme Court. Jan, the fact that it's gone to the Supreme Court means this is a very big deal, but explain what this case is really all about. Good morning, Jan.
Well, Gail, this is an important case about election oversight and redistricting, but it is not, as some commentators have suggested, some backdoor way for state legislatures to try to steal a presidential election. That is overblown. Now, this case came about when Republicans who are in control in the legislature there in North Carolina drew up a new congressional map that was extremely favorable to them. It would have likely flipped a number of seats from Democratic to Republican, so the Democrats challenged that. And the state Supreme Court, which is majority Democrat, threw out the Republican maps as too partisan. So the Republicans then decided they're going to pull out this novel new theory that's called the independent state legislature theory. And that says that the U.S. Constitution gives state legislatures the sole authority to set the, quote, time, places, and manner of holding congressional elections, and that state courts don't have a say in that. Now, if North Carolina wins on that argument, it would really sap the power of state courts to review state election rules or congressional maps, but it would not affect other challenges like challenges based on race. Those are heard in federal courts. And it also would mean that state legislatures could somehow try to substitute a new slate of electors after Election Day to try to steal a presidential election, even if they tried. There are federal laws that would prohibit that.
Maybe try, I don't know.
Jan, thank you. And speaking of North Carolina, tens of thousands of people still don't have power for a fourth straight day in Moore County, North Carolina, as officials investigate Saturday's gunfire attack on electrical substations. The local utility says everyone should have their lights on by tonight. And despite the ordeal, Mark Strassman reports the communities are coming together in the darkness.
Schools in Moore County, North Carolina had to act fast.
We feed about 400 a day for lunch.
At Aberdeen Elementary, Antoinette Ross and Derek Marks removed box after box of food at risk of spoiling.
How much longer does this food have before it would go bad?
Well, they say 72 hours. They give it 72 hours. Been out since Saturday night, about 8 o'clock.
The food shuttled to a warehouse with functioning freezers just in time. One of many ways this community has dealt with a power crisis caused by a deliberate gun attack that disabled 2 of its substations. More than 750 people received free food and water from the North Carolina Food Bank. Investigators have yet to identify suspects or learn why the stations were attacked.
Our investigation continues at a very fast pace.
According to the Department of Energy, there were at least 70 reported incidents involving intentional attacks to the U.S. power grid this year. CBS News obtained a federal law enforcement bulletin that says Oregon and Washington State experienced physical attacks on substations using hand tools, arson, firearms, and metal chains, possibly in response to an online call for attacks on critical infrastructure.
And whoever the perpetrator is, I can assure you, I hope they turn the power off in the cell they put you in.
Here's the good news for the thousands of people here who've been living in a cold house. Gail, all of them should have power again by midnight tonight.
All right, that's good news. They need it right now. Thank you, Mark. It's a long time to go without heat. Thanks. China's government has made a radical shift this morning, officially moving away from its strict zero COVID policies. Now, this move appears to be in response to widespread protests in recent weeks, including some of the boldest demonstrations this country has seen in decades. Elizabeth Palmer is following this story.
China's National Health Commission held a press conference to announce that mandatory COVID testing for most people will end immediately. They'll no longer have to show a negative test result in public places, and those armies of health workers in hazmat suits will stop locking down apartment complexes. Also, people with COVID won't be forced into state quarantine. They'll be able to recover at home. All that and a commitment to vaccinating the elderly sounds like common sense, but it's a huge climb down for Xi Jinping and the Communist Party, who watched protests erupt in over 20 cities with calls for freedom, not lockdowns. Today, the protesters got a lot of what they wanted. But because the government has convinced people that COVID is dangerously lethal, the new rules have brought fresh anxiety. At the Shichahai River, where hardy Beijingers head to swim, this regular was getting ready to plunge in. I'm confused, he told us. Is zero COVID better, or should we learn to live with the virus? This government flip-flop. I'm just not sure which side to pick. He's already picked not getting a vaccine. He's chosen to ward off COVID with a freezing dip to boost his immune system.
The risk now is with so many under-vaccinated elderly people, China is facing a huge surge in COVID deaths. For CBS Mornings, I'm Elizabeth Palmer in Tokyo.
Coming up, we have a CBS News
He just
exclusive.
changed.
Kyla Spring, the college freshman racially abused by a fellow student on video, will be here for her first interview about that attack. But first, it's 7:17. Time to check your local weather.
Good morning, Acadia. The dense fog advisory for the